Hello everyone, my name is Yaman Tashtavar and I provide daily updates on Tesla, tech, and markets. Let's get started. We have a lot to cover today. Markets are just turning positive. Dow Jones is up 0.1%, Nasdaq is up 0.5%, S&P 500 is up 0.3%, Russell 2000 is up 0.8%. Oil prices are at $65 per barrel. Treasury yields are down a couple of basis points, especially in the intermediate term. Let's look at the heat map. Tech stocks are up slightly, carrying the market. You can see Broadcom is down 1.4%. Many chip stocks are up quite a bit actually. Nvidia is up only 0.6%. Tesla is up 0.4%. Financials are mixed, slightly lower. I think Visa was down more earlier today. Insurance companies down a lot. Not sure what's going on there. Maybe we can look into it later on. And oil stocks are up. All right, let's move on to our daily article of the article of the day. Wall Street mixed as U.S.-China trade talks begin. Wall Street's main indices were mixed on Monday as investors watched a fresh round of U.S.-China negotiations aimed at mending a trade rift that has rattled financial markets for much of the year. Top officials from both countries have kicked off discussions at London's Lancaster House, looking to address disagreements around the preliminary trade agreement struck last month that had briefly cooled tensions between the world's largest economies. The meeting, which could run into Tuesday, comes 4 days after U.S. President Trump and Chinese leader Xi, spoke on the phone, their first direct interaction since January 20 inauguration. The leaders had, however, left key issues unresolved. The talks will have to go on for some time before we decide whether or not there is actual progress being made. However, most investors remain hopeful that there will be some positive results, said Peter Anderson. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett told CNBC in an interview on Monday the U.S. trade negotiators are seeking a handshake in London to seal an agreement struck by Trump and Xi to allow the export of China's rare earth minerals. This is a topic that we've been discussing for weeks now, and we're going to go into a little bit more today. Magnets to the U.S. hopes of more trade deals between the U.S. and its major trading partners, along with upbeat earnings and tame inflation data, helped U.S. equities rally in May, with the S&P 500 and tech-heavy Nasdaq notching their best monthly gains since November 2023. The S&P 500 remains a little more than 2% below all-time highs touched in February, while Nasdaq is about 3% below. We're going to go into the macro data later in this live stream. Most mega-cap growth stocks were mixed. We already went over that data, and we're going to look into Robinhood as well. All right, next, US and Chinese officials meet in London for pivotal trade talks. Top US and Chinese officials were meeting in London on Monday to try and defuse a high-stakes trade dispute. On the first of likely 2 days of talk, officials from two superpowers were meeting at the ornate Lancaster House to try to get back on track with preliminary agreement. I'm looking for something new here. We talked about the handshake on the rare earths. The purpose of the meeting today is to make sure that they're serious, but to literally get handshakes. Okay. The talks come at a crucial time for both economies, which are showing signs of strain from Trump's cascade of tariffs orders since his return to the White House in January. Customs data showed that China's exports to the U.S. plunged 34.5% year on year in May in value terms, the sharpest drop since February 2020, when the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic upended global trade. In the U.S., business and household confidence has taken a pummeling, while first quarter gross domestic product contracted due to a record surge in imports as Americans front-loaded purchases to beat anticipated price increases. But for now, the impact on inflation has been muted, and the jobs market has remained fairly resilient. I don't know about that. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Though economists expect cracks to become more apparent over the summer. We're going to go into inflation and unemployment data later in this live stream. Attending the talks in London will be U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer, and the Chinese contingent helmed by Vice President He Lifeng. Let me check one thing real quick. Okay. The inclusion of Lutnick, whose agency oversees export controls for the U.S., is one indication of how central rare earths have become. China holds a near monopoly. I mean, honestly, this is really the crux of the whole trade discussions right now. China refines, I think, 98% of rare earths, which is critical so for so many industries, so much production in the US. China holds a near monopoly on rare earths, a crucial component in electric vehicle motors. It's not just electric vehicle motors, a lot of different things. Vehicles, okay. Lutnick did not attend the Geneva talks at which the countries struck a 90-day deal to roll back some of the triple-digit tariffs they had placed on each other. The second round of meetings comes 4 days after Trump and Xi spoke on the phone, their first direct interaction since Trump's January 20 inauguration. During the more than 1 hour long call, Xi told Trump to back down from trade measures that roiled the global economy and warned him against threatening steps on Taiwan, according to the Chinese government's summary. But Trump said on social media the talks focused primarily on trade led to a very positive conclusion, setting the stage for Monday's meeting in the British capital. The next day, Trump had said Xi had agreed to resume shipments to the US of rare earths, minerals, and magnets. The Reuters reported that China has granted temporary export licenses to rare earth suppliers of the top 3 US automakers. So that would be GM, Ford, and Stellantis. We're going to go into that in a little bit. China's decision in April to suspend exports of a wide range of critical minerals and magnets upended the supply chain central to automakers, aerospace manufacturers, semiconductor companies, and military contractors around the world. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt told the Fox News program Sunday Morning Features that the U.S. wanted the two sides to build on the progress made in Geneva in the hope that they could move towards more comprehensive trade talks. The preliminary deal in Geneva sparked a global relief rally in stock markets, and U.S. indices had been in a or near bear market levels have recouped the lion's share of their losses. But Ian Bremmer, president of the Eurasia Group, said while a temporary truce was possible, there was little prospect for the bilateral relationship to become constructive given broader decoupling trends and continued U.S. pressure on other countries to take China out of their supply chains. Everyone around Trump is still hawkish, and so a breakthrough U.S.-China trade deal is unlikely, especially in the context of other deals that are further along and prioritized, he said in an analyst note. All right. U.S. seeking handshake. We already went through this now a couple of times. U.S. auto suppliers say immediate action needed on China rare earths restrictions. A group representing auto suppliers in the U.S. states called on Wednesday for immediate action to address China's restricted exports of rare earths, minerals, and magnets, warning the issue could quickly disrupt auto parts production. China controls over 90% of global processing capacity for rare earths. Automobiles, fighter jets, and home appliances impose restrictions. So I don't, like, honestly, with this card in their hand, I don't know how they don't come on top from these trade discussions. I think Mr. Taco is going to have to cave again, but we'll see. The tighter restrictions follow the opening of which has been my view for since this started. It's since April, but the tighter restrictions followed by the opening a trade war between the U.S. and China after Trump imposed tariffs on Chinese imports. In a statement to Reuters, MEMA, the Vehicle Suppliers Association, said parts companies are facing serious real-time risks to their supply chains. The situation remains unresolved and the level of concern remains very high. Immediate and decisive action is needed to prevent widespread disruption. White House did not comment. On May 9th, Supply Group raised urgent concerns about Chinese restrictions in a joint letter with the trade group representing GM, Toyota, VW, Hyundai, and other major automakers. Without reliable access to these elements and magnets, automotive suppliers will be unable to produce critical automotive components, including automatic transmissions, throttle bodies, alternators, various motors. I mean, some of these don't apply to Tesla, so the idea that this just applies to EVs is wrong. Various motors, sensors, seat belts, speakers, lights, motors, power steering, and cameras. MEMA and Alliance for Automotive Innovation wrote to Trump administration. Rare earth magnet exports from China halved in April as companies grappled with an opaque application process for permits that sometimes require hundreds of pages of documents. In a social media post last Friday, Trump accused China of violating terms of a deal reached in May to temporarily dial back the tariffs both sides imposed on each other and other trade restrictions. U.S. auto companies are already feeling the impact of the restrictions. Ford shut down production of its Explorer SUV at its Chicago plant for a week in May because of a rare earth shortage, the company said. China issues rare earth licenses to suppliers. We already talked about this. There was a paragraph in the previous article. I can scroll. You can pause it if you want to read this article, or just Google the title. Musk's Tesla seeks to guard crash data from public disclosure. So we're changing topics to Tesla. Musk's Tesla seeks to guard crash data from public disclosure. And I think there's only one reason, because the data is not good. Doesn't make Tesla FSD look good. If you want to see, go to teslafsdtracker.com for a community tracker, and that really shows after a couple hundred miles at most, you get a critical disengagement. So literally, it's like paying someone $99 a month to try to kill you once every few days. And so I don't expect FSD take rate to increase materially anytime soon. Tesla has asked a judge to reject a demand for some of its vehicle crash data held by the US by NHTSA, saying that public disclosure of the information could cause competitive harm. Tesla, the electric, this is ridiculous. Tesla, the electric car maker owned by billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk, said in a federal court filing in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday that the requested information is confidential and could be used by rival companies to assess Tesla's technology. Tesla was responding to a lawsuit filed by the Washington Post last year. Interesting. Tesla was responding to a lawsuit filed by Washington Post last year against the NHTSA, seeking records about crashes that occurred while driver assistance systems were in use. Tesla is widely known for its so-called advanced driver assistance systems, including autopilot and FSD. Tesla has defended its technology and said that its self-driving software requires active driver supervision and does not make vehicle autonomous. Tesla and the safety agency did not immediately respond to requests for comment, and neither did a lawyer for the Washington Post. A highway safety agency in a separate filing also argued that the Post's demand sought information that is exempt from the federal public records laws. The Post has said that the NHTSA releases some crash reporting information, but it withholds critical details about the technologies in use and circumstances and locations of the crashes. Tesla, in its court filing, said it and the Auto Safety Agency should be allowed to keep secret certain crash-related narrative information, including road conditions and driver behavior. Tesla also said the agency cannot be forced to share information about the hardware and software versions of the driver assistance programs that may have been used at the time of the vehicle crash. Why? Public release of the information will allow Tesla's competitors to assess the efficacy of each version and also allow them to calculate how many crashes are associated with different systems, Tesla said. Lawyers for the Post have argued that the version information of the Tesla software and hardware is not kept private, since Tesla drivers can access the information on their own within their vehicle. In October, NHTSA opened an investigation into 2.4 million Tesla vehicles featuring FSD technology over 4 reported collisions, including a 2023 fatal crash. Tesla in 2023 recalled more than 2 million US vehicles, etc. And an Axios article on Tesla, threats to Tesla's revenue are piling up. Tesla faces fresh risks to a big income stream, sales or regulatory credits to other automakers under vehicle emissions and efficiency rules. I mean, this is critical for Tesla. Without these, Tesla is not profitable. They actually lose money, and they would have to restrict production to get to a break-even. So let's read about this. Why it matters. Tesla's credit sales were $595 million last quarter and totaled $3.4 billion in the 5 quarters through Q1 of 2025. The credits are awarded to companies like Tesla that exceed emission standards. Producers of gas-powered vehicles buy them to help meet various CO2 and mileage standards. Republicans on the Senate's Commerce Committee last week proposed ending civil penalties under the Transportation Department's fuel economy rules. Late last week. This is kind of when Elon went off the rails on X. It's part of the committee's portion of the budget reconciliation bill, the top GOP and White House legislative priority. The provision would modestly cut auto prices by ending penalties on automakers that now design cars to conform to the wishes of DC bureaucrats rather than consumers, a GOP summary states. The Senate action would effectively end the market for CFE credits. Chris Harto, a senior policy analyst at Consumer Reports, tells Axios via email. Dan Becker, who heads the Safe Climate Transport campaign at the Center for biological diversity noted, why buy credits if Trump gives you a get out of cafe free card? Driving the news. Separately, DOT on Friday issued an interpretive rule that bars consideration of EVs when it sets these mileage rules. It's a step forward crafting replacement standards, DOT said. This paves the way for less aggressive requirements and less need for buying credits. State of play. Several buckets of credits benefit Tesla, the dominant US EV seller. EPA emission standards, the Transportation Department fuel economy mandates, and California's ambitious Clean Cars program all provide opportunities. European emission rules also generate credits. In the bigger picture, the regulatory credit market was already facing risks before all the news last week. EPA is planning to resign Biden-era EPA carbon emission rules for model years 2027 and onward. The House passed reconciliation bill, and the Senate GOP proposal would also nix them, and the House bill pulls back Biden-era DOT mileage rules. Both chambers have passed measures that end EPA's approval of California's other emission rules. Potential loss of credit revenues comes at a perilous time for Tesla. Its sales have slumped in recent quarters, and the CEO Elon Musk's rightward turn and alliance with Trump are among the reasons why, analysts say. The House plan ends $7,500 consumer purchase subsidies for EVs under the Democrats' 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. Credit revenues exceeded Tesla's overall profit last quarter. This is a critical point. In other words, it would have been in red without them. Yes, Q1 was atypically weak for Tesla, but consider Q4 of 2024 when Tesla reported $2.1 billion in profits that were helped along by $692 million in credit sales. In Q3, those numbers were $2.2 billion and $739 million respectively. More broadly, the meltdown of Tesla CEO Musk's relationship with Trump also creates a new unpredictable risks for the billionaire entrepreneur's business empire. There are plenty of court battles ahead over Trump 2.0 and GOP policies, including efforts to scuttle California's rules. The bottom line, if the administration gets its way on all of its stated policy objectives around vehicle regulations, there will no longer be any market for the US for Tesla's regulatory credits. So major news, we're going to follow that closely. In China, China's EV exports grew 19% in the first 5 months of 2025, led by Chery, MG, and Geely. So this is also very important because in China, the market is pretty much unprofitable. I mean, BYD makes some money, but Tesla doesn't make any money in China. And if this competitive pressure expands into Europe and other parts of the world, as it is now at this very rapid pace, I think Tesla's profits will continue to erode at a very rapid pace, even if these EV credits, etc., aren't canceled. So Tesla is facing many risks at once from multiple fronts. China's EV exports surged 19% year on year in the first 5 months of 2025, according to data released by the General Administration of Customs on June 9. Exports of equipment manufacturing products reached 6.2 trillion yuan, approximately $858 billion, a 9.2% increase from last year, accounting for 58% of the country's total exports. The export momentum was led by EVs, construction machinery, and ships and industrial robots. Chery led domestic automakers in total vehicle exports with 250,000 units exported in the first 5 months. MG, owned by SAIC, followed 169,000 units. Geely came in third with 161,000 units, marking a remarkable 100% year-on-year increase. I mean, these are extreme growth rates. And this is one reason why Tesla sales are shrinking now. Notably, 71,000 of Geely's exports were to European markets. Okay. So it's actually less than half. Okay. BYD ranked fourth with 159,000 units exported. However, only 61% of these were pure EVs, while the rest were plug-in hybrids, reflecting relatively lower overseas demand for BEVs than the domestic market. Haval followed with 91,000 units, of which 95% were traditional fuel vehicles, achieved an 80% year-on-year growth. Chang'an in sixth place, we're going to skip this part. Overall, the top 10 exporters fell into 3 tiers. 4 brands exported more than 150,000 units, 2 exported between, etc. On a broader scale, China's total goods trade. All right, basically, the competitive pressures in China are expanding to Europe and many other parts of the world. These companies are unfortunately not allowed to sell in the US. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else. Analysts say that the continued momentum in exports, particularly in equipment manufacturing EVs, demonstrate the resilience of China's trade sector amid global uncertainties. All right, next. BYD hits back. So BYD is suing influencers. 37 influencers sued over online defamation. $690,000 rewards for leads. On June 4, BYD's legal department released a statement via its official WeChat account, accounting updates on several ongoing legal cases concerning online defamation. The company said it is taking legal action against 37 influencer accounts and has placed an additional 126 under internal monitoring for alleged disinformation and damaging content. Li Yunfei, GM of BYD's branding and PR department, echoed the announcement, stating that all relevant posts and comment threads are preserved as legal evidence. We welcome media criticism and public oversight, but we will not tolerate defamatory content or false accusations. Legal action will continue, Li wrote. BYD also reiterated its long-term financial incentive program, offering rewards ranging from approximately $6,900 to $690,000 for verified leads related to suspected online disinformation targeting the company. In the statement, so disinformation, I think, implies intent. So that's interesting. In this statement, BYD said it has faced repeated online attacks in recent years involving false or misleading information that it claims has harmed its brand image, disrupted market order, and negatively affected the wider automotive sector. While BYD has described these incidents as organized or coordinated, it has not provided public evidence supporting the coordination of such efforts. Examples. A Weibo user identified as etc. was found guilty of defamation after accusing BYD of manipulating online influencers to disparage competitors. A court ordered a public apology and a payment of $13,800. A WeChat video account was similarly ordered to apologize and pay 100,000 yuan, same amount, in damages after posting content deemed insulting to BYD and its executives. The WeChat and Yuan accounts were found to have made false claims about product safety and quality. A court ruled this behavior constituted unfair competition and ordered damages of approximately $8,300. A user posting under the alias was penalized by police for circulating unverified claims about BYD's financial instability and potential bankruptcy. I mean, we see this from many people on X. Unverified claims about BYD's financial instability and potential bankruptcy is just complete BS. This company is probably one of the most successful companies in the world in the automotive industry, if not the most successful. So it's unfortunate that we see that kind of bullshit from US accounts as well. But another user received administrative detention for posting false claims regarding vehicle explosions. A third user is currently under criminal investigation for repeatedly publishing content BYD says was defamatory. According to the company, additional lawsuits related to similar cases are ongoing. While some court decisions have validated BYD's legal claims, other investigations remain unresolved. When writing, none of the influencers in the statement has publicly commented on the accusations. Details about the specific content that led to legal action remain limited. BYD emphasized its ongoing commitment to using legal avenues to respond, etc. All right, next, how Chinese EV owners are profiting from powering the grid with V2G. So we've seen examples of this in US, and now we're seeing many examples of that in China as well. EVs are increasingly being viewed not just as a mode of transport, but as potential financial assets thanks to burgeoning vehicle-to-grid technology. This innovative system allows EVs to act as mobile power banks. I mean, my main takeaway from this article was that, let's just read the summary here, is that this technology is not proprietary to Tesla. A lot of other automakers in many countries are doing the same thing. Vehicle-to-grid technology allows EVs to discharge electric back into the grid during peak demand, providing financial benefits to owners through peak valley electricity price differences. While the potential for profit is appealing, concerns about battery longevity remain a key barrier to widespread adoption. This is true. Strategies to address these concerns include battery as a service models, enhanced understanding of battery technology, and the increasing frequency of vehicle replacement. Let me just kind of cruise through this to see if there's anything else. One of the most compelling incentives. This part is actually pretty interesting. Strategies to address the battery longevity concerns include battery as a service models. So that would be battery swaps that about 10 years ago Tesla wrote off, but it's actually flourishing in China, that technology. So in this context, it actually makes a bit of a sense. A recent survey by the Paper Institute for May 26-28 explored a pilot V2G charging and battery swap station project. Researchers engaged with automotive companies, battery manufacturers, and EV owners to understand the current landscape and future potential of V2G. The findings highlight that educating the public about V2G and ensuring owner benefits while alleviating battery life concerns are paramount for successful implementation. One of the most compelling incentives, NIO, a prominent EV manufacturer, is participating in V2G pilot project in Shanghai, which includes residential and park charging piles and bidirectional battery swap stations. All right, talks about how much this one person made. We've seen many articles like that, some screenshots. Battery life concerns, battery as a service, and battery swapping, enhanced understanding battery technology. You can pause the video and read about this stuff if you want, but I don't really see anything new that we don't know yet already. Okay. BYD unleashes an EV industry and reckoning that alarms Beijing. The price war engulfing China's EV industry has already sent share prices tumbling and prompted an unusual level of intervention from Beijing. The shakeout may just be getting started. For all Chinese government's efforts to prevent price cuts by market leader BYD from turning into a vicious spiral, analysts say a combination of weaker demand and extreme overcapacity will slice into profits at the strongest brands and force feebler competitors to fold. Even after the number of EV makers started shrinking for the first time last year, the industry is still using less than half its production capacity. I mean, this is incredible. The industry is still using less than half of its production capacity. Under 60% production capacity, you're looking at losses. 50%, you're looking at billions of dollars of losses. Different company. Robinhood shares fall as S&P 500 inclusion hopes dashed. Shares of Robinhood dipped 6% on Monday after S&P Dow Jones indices made no changes to the S&P 500 membership following recent speculation that the online brokerage would be added to the index. The S&P Dow Jones indices announced late Friday that it would not be making any changes to components of the benchmark S&P 500 as part of quarterly rebalancing. Robinhood stock rallied in recent weeks, touching its highest level since the company's 2021 market debut on Friday, as investors priced in a possible inclusion in the index. Bank of America analysts earlier this month touted the company as the prime candidate to join the S&P 500. Shares were down 6%, set to snap a 6-day winning streak. Marketing platform AppLovin, which also rallied last week on best of inclusion, dropped 5%. When smaller companies are looking for inclusions in the S&P or any other index, it means millions of dollars could potentially flow to them without a substantive event. So speculative traders have to expect volatility because it is often the case that you'll see something like this happen where expectations are one thing and reality is another. We know the requirements. Okay. Crypto exchange operated Coinbase was the latest addition to the index. All right, great. Next. UK vehicle production fall worst in 70 years. Let's just read the summary on this. Vehicle manufacturing output in the UK fell 16% in April, the lowest since 1952, due to the automaker uncertainty over US import tariffs, Easter holidays, and lower demand in key export markets. So, US automakers are not the only ones getting hit by the expansion of Chinese automakers across the world. Passenger car production fell 9% and commercial vehicle output declined by 69%. Shipments to the EU and US decreased while exports to China and Turkey rose. The one thing I want to highlight on some couple of macro items. This is the employment report from Friday. Total non-farm employment increased by 139,000 in May, and the unemployment rate was unchanged at 4.2%. Adult month 3.9%, adult women 3.9%. Teenagers is where most of the unemployment here is 13.4%. Okay, there's some dispersion among races. Whites 3.8%, blacks 6.0%, Asians 3.6%, and Hispanics 5.1%. Not much change there. The number of people jobless less than 5 weeks increased 264,000 to 2.5 million in May. The number of long-term unemployed decreased over the month to 1.5 million. So that's an interesting shift that I haven't seen highlighted anywhere else. Both measures were a little change over last year. The long-term unemployed accounted for 20.4% of all unemployed people in May. Another interesting change here is in May, the employment population ratio declined by 0.3% to 59.7%. That's a pretty big change in 1 month. The labor force participation rate decreased by 0.2% to 62.4%. Okay? So I'm going to think more about that. The number of people employed part-time for economic reasons at 4.6 million changed little in May. These individuals would have preferred full-time employment but were working part-time because their hours have been reduced or they were unable to find full-time jobs. In May, the number of people not in the labor force who currently want a job was little change at 6 million. Okay. And one more thing I want to highlight. Actually, two more things. Healthcare added 62,000 jobs, so healthcare is still strong, higher than the average monthly gain of 44,000 over the prior 12 months. These are hospitals, ambulatory healthcare services, and skilled nursing facilities. Employment in leisure and hospitality continued to trend up, which is kind of surprising to me that this part is still trending up, largely in food services and drinking places, because I'm not seeing this confirmed in other data. Over the prior 12 months, leisure and hospitality had added an average of 20,000 jobs per month. I think these numbers are going to get revised down. Federal government employment continued to decline in May, negative 22,000, is down by 59,000 since January. Average hourly earnings rose by 15 cents or 0.4%. That's a pretty strong increase to $36. Over the past 12 months, average hourly earnings have increased by 3.9%. Still a little high for Fed's taste. And then the last thing I want to highlight is here. The change in total non-farm payroll employment for March was revised down 65,000, and the April was revised down by 30,000. As we discussed, as we predicted, these revisions are so with these revisions, employment in March and April combined is 95,000 lower, and I think the same will happen for the May number. We have a lot of data coming this week, especially this is the inflation week. You can see the CPI is on Wednesday. Yep, right. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is on CPI. Expect to be 0.2. Core CPI expect to be 0.3, slightly up from 0.2. So I think we're going to see some impact of tariffs in May, but I think most of it is going to come in June. Year over year, CPI is expected 2.5. Core is expected 2.9%, up from 2.8%. Okay, so watch this potential increase. If it doesn't increase, I think that will be positive for equity markets. May PPI is expected to go from negative 0.5% to plus 0.2, and core PPI, this is on Thursday, plus 0.3. Okay. Year over year, core PPI 3.1% expected. Initial jobless claims has been ticking up in the last couple of weeks, expected to be 241,000, and continued jobless claims expected on Thursday expect to be 1.9 million. So Thursday is going to be pretty busy with inflation. So Wednesday and Thursday, pretty busy days. And then we have University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index coming on Friday. But on that note, consumer inflation, today we got the Fed's data, Fed's consumer survey, and you can see the divergence between two. The light blue is the University of Michigan survey. The dark blue is the New York Fed survey. New York Fed is 3.2% for 1 year ahead inflation rate. Still a little elevated compared to pre-COVID times, but not nearly as much as the University of Michigan. This is May data. Both are May data. All right. On that note, thank you very much, everybody. And let me see if there's any questions. A couple of highs in the comments on YouTube. And I will chat with you all next time. Take care.